At the same time that women are making strides when it comes to political leadership, they're also the victims of violence at levels that some describe as epidemic. Students from Eurasia, participating in the State Department's Future Leaders Exchange program, visited the Wilson Center to discuss these issues and others during a meeting with Rangita da Silva de Alves and Allison Brisk. Their discussion is the focus of this edition of Rewind.
Currently, the world average in legislative bodies constitutes 20% women in legislative bodies around the world, which means, in other words, that the corridors of power are resoundingly male. 80% of our legislators, 80% of those who represent 51% of the women of the world are men.
What are the biggest barriers? Are they cultural? Are they religious? Are they wealth or relative wealth? What are the biggest barriers?
There's a constellation of reasons, and one of the reasons is something that you articulated earlier: violence against women. Because of violence against women, both in the private and the public spheres, women don't have an equal playing field to run for office or to serve in decision making in their governments.
Violence is standing in the way of women's empowerment, and women's empowerment is really key to, as we've just talked about, peace, development, health, healthier societies overall.
Isolating male violence against women isn't arbitrary. It's because that's where most of the violence is occurring, correct?
Societies that are coming out of a conflict, or certainly in the midst of a conflict, are also more violent against women. And that often when a country is being reconstructed from a war or a dictatorship or a transition, it's really important to keep an eye on that, because you elect a new set of leaders, you write a new constitution, you disarm the official militaries, but there's an institutionalized, a socialized violence that continues.
Rangita, is it possible to overstate the importance of education in the equation?
The new generation of anti-violence against women laws specify in very concrete ways the important role of education in addressing violence and in preventing violence, because these laws are not only about punishing the perpetrator, it is about preventing.
I am Anna, I am from Armenia, and I currently live in Ohio. As we know, there is no law in the Constitution prohibiting women to become a president. So what do you think, what's the reason there haven't been any women who was a president?
Here in the United States?
Yes.
Okay.
Until recently, the financial base, the political networks, and the experience coming up through the congressional system have stood in the way of women as executive level leaders.
You said about violence against women in Asian countries, and now I want to point focus on the USA and to ask you about the level of importance of this issue in the USA, and if you can name some statistics and problem zones.
About 1,500 women a year are killed. That number, fortunately, is slowly dropping. We have a lot of programs. We just recently finally renewed the Violence Against Women Act, and the current administration, the Obama administration, and the Clinton administration were both very active on programs. Interestingly, Joe Biden, our vice president, from the time he was in Congress, has been a very active proponent and worked very hard on this. So it shows that leadership and men's leadership can make a difference.
Something other than education, because we've talked about that and we know that individual empowerment, that it's important, education. So let's not dismiss it, but let's say that we've discussed it. What other tip would you give?
Networks are what we depend on when we are being threatened, when our personal security is being threatened, or when our community's security is being threatened. So the network is one important feature.
For more information, visit wilsoncenter.org. Click the Programs tab to find additional resources from the Global Women's Leadership Initiative.